Hello students, today's topic of this lecture is the general circulation. The general circulation of the atmosphere is usually considered to consist of totality of motions which characterizes the global scale atmospheric flow. In particular, the study of general circulation is concerned with the temporary and or spatially average structures of winds, temperatures and other climate elements. For the present purpose, the general circulation will be regarded as consisting of the time averaged flow, where averages are taken over periods sufficiently long to remove the random variables in the wind temperatures associated with individual weather systems, but short enough to retain seasonal variations. Time average circulation is highly longitudinally dependent due to longitudinally asymmetric forcing by orography and land-sea heating contrast. The longitudinally dependent components of general circulation consist of number 1, monsoon circulations, which are seasonally reversing circulations. That means each season it changes. Another is stationary circulations, which are also called low frequency variability. So before that, we have to know about the zonal and meridional flow. What is the zonal and meridional flow? When the upper level winds, suppose from the surface upper side you observe, when the upper level winds are parallel to the or nearly parallel to the lines of the latitude, the winds pattern is termed as zonal winds. Again, when the winds cross the latitude lines at a sharp angle, the winds pattern is termed as meridional winds. Low pressure systems tend to move faster west to each side mainly when associated with zonal flow. A meridional pattern, which is highly curved flow, generates more vorticity. That means when the wind is rotational in motion, then vorticity will be more. Forecasting become more difficult when jet streams like wind flow are in meridional in nature. That means when wind flows are in more curved way, they are moving along north south, more components will be there, then it is more difficult to forecast. A complete understanding of physical basics for the general circulation requires an explanation not only for zonally average circulation but the longitudinally and time varying components as well. Nevertheless, to study the general circulation, it is useful to isolate those processes that maintain the zonal mean flow, that is the flow averaged around the latitude circles. The focus of this discussion is on the typical wind circulations from found on Earth as a result of forces affecting wind in the atmosphere. The average global winds are called general circulation of the atmosphere. That means we are not considering here particular thunderstorms or small scale systems. Rather, here we are considering large scale systems, how seasonally winds are flowing from one place to another place of the earth, and what might be the reason behind that. So for that, another model also will be needing, we will discuss later in this lecture. To find typical wind circulation, one needs to average wind speed and duration over a long period of time. That's why we are calling the general circulation, not a particular event or thunderstorm or a mesoscale convective systems. We are considering a long-term systems. So in long term, we are averaging so that small fluctuations will be omitted. Averaging over time removes short duration fluctuations, allowing the primary sense of movement to be visualized. The reason we have global wind pattern is ultimately due to differentially heated, that because the Earth's surface is not straight line, it is round. It is again Earth is rotating on an axis. The differential heating of Earth continually caused an imbalance in the air pressure and temperature around the world, which in turn causes a continuous general circulation of wind that attempt to restore balance. While actual winds in a given place and time may differ from the average general circulation, the average can provide an explanation for how and why the winds prevail from a particular direction in a certain place. For example, the prevailing surface winds tend to be westerly in the continental United States but northwesterly in the Hawaii region. The general circulation also serves as a model for how heat and momentum are transported from the equator to the poles. So before that, the starting point from where this circulation arises. To understand that, we have to know what is differential heating. So as you can see in the figure, solar incoming sunlight, solar radiation is coming and it is falling on the Earth's surface. So when it is daytime, one part of the Earth's surface is heated. Again, particular regions are getting direct sunlights, which are less distant and direct sunlight. That is the tropical region. You can see the central part of the figure, the central line. Similarly, less radiation is received by the polar regions. So this picture is from Earth's NASA, which is in public domain. So let's discuss about this differential heating. Because the Earth is round, solar radiation is not equally spread at all latitudes. So you can see different latitudes, the distance from the sun is different. The angle of the incident rays for a particular position is different. Near the equator, where sunlight shines directly on Earth, more solar radiation per square meter is received as compared to the near poles, where sunlight shines at a sharp angles to the surface. Towards Earth's pole, the same solar radiation is spread over a larger surface area such that each square meter of the Earth's surface gets less radiation at the poles. Okay. Again, as Earth rotates, the incoming solar radiation is zonally spread along latitude lines. In this way, incoming solar radiation depends on latitude. In this way, this latitudinal dependent we have shown. The sun shines more directly on tropics region and less, that means lower latitudes than the higher latitudes all year round. Solar radiation adds heat to the Earth's atmosphere oceanic system, and thus lower latitudes gets heated more than higher latitudes. This should be as expected because we know that tropics are warmer than the polar regions. Suppose over India, you are in the eastern or northeastern part of India, the temperature is less here. If you go to South India, which are more lower latitude, the temperature will increase. That is the basic understanding, that solar radiation is giving more energy to the lower latitudes surfaces. While Earth is continually heated by sun, it is also continually losing energy by emitting outgoing long wave infrared radiation. You have to remember this term, outgoing long wave infrared radiation at all latitudes and at all times, both on the light and dark side of the globe. So when averaged over a globe and over a long time, incoming ultraviolet radiation exactly balance outgoing infrared radiation, but latitude by latitude, incoming ultraviolet and outgoing radiation do not perfectly balance. More solar radiation is received by Earth in the tropics, and while cooling by outgoing infrared radiation helps to offset this, there is still a net gain of radiative energy in the tropics. That means over the tropics, more heat is received but less heat is going outside, whereas over the polar region, less heat is received but more is going outside. So there is an imbalance. So to maintain this balance, however, near Earth's pole, incoming solar radiation is less direct and too weak to offset the cooling by outgoing infrared radiation. So there is net cooling at the poles. This causes warmer air in the equator and cold air at the poles and drives Earth's atmosphere general circulation. Due to this, the wind flows from equator to the pole side. Now you can see this figure illustrates this more directly. Incoming solar radiation is focused near the equator, while outgoing infrared radiation is relatively evenly spread across all the latitude. This results in the below energy surplus near the equator and deflects toward the poles. So you can see this figure. This figure where the 0 degree is associated with the equator and 90 degree associated with the polar region. So 60 to 90 you can assume as a polar region. So blue regions, two sides of the region, you can see heat is less there, and here in the equator side there is a surplus of the heat. So this heat should be transferred to the polar region in order to maintain the heat energy balance. That's why. So from which sources energy comes, why this heat should, how this heat is balanced. To understand this, we need to understand the thermal wind. That means how the wind moves from one place to another place. So for that, just a simple example is where the surface is much heated, the air becomes lighter because water vapor get into it and air become lighter. So when this air becomes lighter, it moves upwards. Now the place where the heat is less, like cold areas, those places are containing dense air. Okay, so what happens? Lighter air place is empty and dense air comes to the place, and again at the same time upper air goes to the dense air region. Okay, if it is not clear, just simple assumption is that where the temperature is high, that place winds are coming to that place. Okay, so tropics are more heated, that's why from the surrounding longitudinal belt winds are coming to the place to maintain the pressure difference as well as the heat difference. Okay, that type of wind blow is called thermal wind. That is why in an attempt to balance the Earth's incoming and outgoing energy, warm air is transported towards the poles from the equator, while cool air flows back towards the equator. This seems simple enough. Okay, so hot air moves to the polar side and cold air from the pole it comes to the equator side. However, this simple flow is complicated by many factors, including Earth's rotation, the position of continents, interaction with the ocean, and many others. In order to build an understanding of this process, we will start with some simplified model and build complexity slowly. So first model was introduced by single cell model was introduced by Hadley. So the first this is the single cell model. In the figure you can see that is the Earth's surface, where the green part is showing more hot areas, blues are cold areas. With this model we make the following assumptions: that there are no seasons and the sun is always shining directly over the equator. This removes seasonal wind shifts. Number 2, there is no Coriolis force while the Earth rotates to spread heat along longitudinal lines. This allows to us only be concerned with the pressure gradient force. So this assumption has been made. With this assumption in place, Earth's global circulation would like the figure, this figure, with one giant vertically overturning cell in each hemisphere. So in the northern hemisphere, you can see the arrows are showing that upper side the hot air is moving towards the cold area, and from cold area lower side the cold air is coming to the equator. So this is called single cell model assumed by Hadley. So that will be a single cell from equator to polar region in both the hemisphere, northern hemisphere as well as southern hemisphere. The excess heating at the equator is transported poleward by rising warm air, which is replaced by cold sinking polar air moving equatorward. This circulation is known as Hadley cell or Hadley circulation. The Hadley cell is known as a thermally direct circulation because in it warm air is rising and cold air is sinking. Okay, in the figure you can see. The circulation can be thought in two ways. In the first, hot air at the equator rises because it is warm and buoyant. Because warm air becomes lighter, it goes upside. It reaches a tropopause, spreading laterally north and south at high elevations. To compensate for the rising air, surface air flows towards the equator side. A second way to view global circulation is that the excess heating of air at the equator creates a large area of low pressure at the surface of the planet, while excess cooling at the poles creates a high pressure at the surface. This global horizontal pressure gradient causes air to flow from high to low at the surface, where the air subsequently rises at the equator and flows back to the poles and sinks. Both reasonings are plausible. It's a matter of whether you focus on temperature or pressure. Both are same. The temperature difference and the resulting pressure difference are similar in both, important for the general circulation. Okay, while this single cell model can explain some phenomenon and works in some ways, it is not the reality on Earth. Earth is a rotating planet, so we need to consider the Coriolis force in addition to the pressure gradient force. In the single cell model, as upper level air flows from the equator towards the poles, it would be deflected by Coriolis force. That is very important, that in single cell model, it is not the reality of the Earth. Their Coriolis parameter and the rotation of the Earth was not considered. Only the pressure gradient force was considered. In the northern hemisphere, for example, this deflection would be towards the right, resulting in a wind from west to east at upper levels. In this way, the air moving from the equator to the poles would never make it there because of rotation of Earth. So that's why there is a failure in the single cell model to explain all this. That's why we need a different model to explain. In this purpose, 3-cell model came out. If we allow for the effect of rotating planet, the simple single cell model above breaks down into multiple cells in each hemisphere as shown in the figure. You can see this figure. So again, single cell is divided into multiple cells. There is still excess heating in equatorial region and excess cooling in the polar region. Instead of heating being redistributed by one massive Hadley cell from the equator to the poles, there are now 3 convective cells we are considering. The first of these is still the same thermally direct Hadley cell from before, but now it extends only from the equator to 30° latitude. So first figure you have seen, Hadley cell was distributed up to, the single cell model was telling that Hadley cell is distributed from the 0 to 90°. That means from the equator to the pole region, as you have seen in the earlier figure. But now this cell is divided into 3 and Hadley cell is now distributed up to 0 degree latitude to 30° latitude. The poles still have a large high pressure system while the equator has a large belt of low pressure along it. Let's take a closer look at what happens to the rising air just above the equator now. At the equator, you just see the line, the black dotted semi-dotted line, dashed dotted line. You can see 0 degree is written and L is written, that is the low pressure area. So there at the equator, the air near the surface is warm, winds are light, and the pressure gradient is weak. This region of monotonous weather is known as doldrums. So that is important. What is called doldrums, you have to know. The 0 degree latitude, around the 0 degree, the weather is very calm, winds are light, and pressure gradient is also very weak. This region is called doldrums. The warm air here rises, condensing into massive cumulonimbus cloud and thunderstorms, which release large amount of latent heat as they form. The additional heat makes the air even more likely to rise and provides the energy that drives the rising branch of the Hadley cell. This rising air reaches the stable troposphere, which blocks it from rising further, causing the air to divert at the upper level and move poleward. Due to the Coriolis force, this upper level poleward flow is deflected to the right in the northern hemisphere and left to the southern hemisphere, providing westerlies aloft near the troposphere in both hemisphere in the Hadley cell. So what you can see from the black line, as air moves upside from the edge, that is 30 degree latitude, winds are coming to the lower pressure levels, that is near the equator, but the lines are deflected in the northern hemisphere. When from 30 degree to 0 degree it is coming, it is deflected right side, as well as when from the 30 degree south it is coming, it is deflected left side. Okay, so you have to remember this is due to the movement of the earth. Okay. So similarly, the high pressure regions at 30 degree latitude and between 60 degree latitude, there will be also a movement of air, high to low. Again 60 degree, there is a low pressure area and it will move to the 30 degree to 60 degree. On the northern hemisphere, you can see it is moving right side, and on the southern hemisphere it into the left side when it is moving. From the figure at the extreme left side, you can see some arrows are there. Those are representing the vertical motion of the air from one place to another place. The arrow is showing from where the winds are flowing. Okay, so three type of movements are there. Between 0 to 30 degree, it is called Hadley cell. Between 30 degree to 60 degree, the movement of air, the cell is called Ferrel cell. Okay, again 60 degree to 90 degree, it is called polar cell. So these three cells are defining more accurately than the single cell model, and this is the overall circulation pattern of the wind of the global circulation. This figure is more clear to understand, same as the earlier figure, but with the continental maps are here. So you can see different cells with the Hadley, Ferrel, and as well as polar cells. Here another line is written, intertropical convergence zone. That means inside the tropic also, the maximum sunlight received by the regions are more hotter. So the temperature line shifted in the summer time in the northern hemisphere, shifted to the northern side, because northern side land surfaces are more. So it shifted little bit towards the north side. Again during the winter time, it shifted to the south side. This area where the airs are converging in the tropics region, the hypothetical line is called intertropical convergence zone. So in the next video, I shall discuss about the mathematical explanation of general circulation model, how the model can be conceptualized for these wind patterns for different parts of the world. So that explanation I will do in the next video.